A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Super Foam Flying on HJN. And today, we're going to get down to some serious business relating to the Dragon Power series. Because in total, there's been 3 blasters that were released in 2021. But of all the ones that I reviewed from that year, I only did the Fire Shot and Ember Strike. And of course, it's now time to bring on the 3rd entry, which I in fact just bought secondhand. The Skyblaze. Yeah, this is pretty much one of the only newer bows that I was in fact able to get my hands on, but I've since been able to collect others, both compound and crossbow related. But of all the ones that I've had to review based on the compound bow lineup of Nerf blasters so far, the Skyblaze is probably very intriguing only because it's newer. And let's not forget that, well, its signature action is the utilization of this elastic string, which allows you to pull back and, well, launch a dart. But as you just saw, it buckshotted 2 of them at once. It does supposedly have its own sort of smart AR system that allows it to. Yeah, that time it worked a lot better. But of all the blasters that I've had to talk about from the compound bow lineup that currently exists, at this point in time, it's fair for me to say that there's probably a lot of cons about this thing. Because first of all, look down here, these little stakes are actually supposed to act as dart storage. But of course, like a few other blasters that have had dart storage on top, this could be, well, it's pretty much just light shakes, but they might sound like that they hold securely in place, but yeah, even the slightest bump that comes by can cause them to fall right off. We've seen this happen with blasters like the Ion Fire and Barrel Break's tactical rail attachment, which is a dart storage much like this sort of design, and even some others pretty much. If there's one in particular that I feel like excels above all the others so far, then I'd have to point out the Ultra 3, which I've talked about many times over, and I've declared it to be one of the best blasters I ever owned. You see right here, onboard dart storage that is pretty much included won't easily come off, mostly from shakes. Also, from bumping and all that, it would take a lot of force because of how much friction there is that holds these Ultra darts in place. And I tell you what, a lot of people out there are calling the Ultra 3 one of the worst blasters that I have ever seen. But that is not even close to true. I'm especially out there deducing Lord Draconical's lies left and right based on this blaster. And if I could tell anybody anything about 2021 blasters in comparison to 2020 blasters, this one right here actually is one of a few reasons why 2021 is not at all a decent year. It's an absolutely terrible year. And I'll tell you what, the Skyblaze right here, of all compound bow related blasters out there, I pretty much just stick to crossbow related ones out there. Even the Dreadbolt, believe it or not, actually does way better at its own job at being a Nerf blaster than this. Because first of all, darts and arrows. We've pretty much seen arrows be made in Nerf's lineup, especially over the past 20 to 30 years. And being that we've actually had actual compound bows or crossbows that utilize actual arrows, like if I were to basically pull something out real quick, then, well, you basically get the idea that, of course, this is pretty much a real arrow. I would more or less call it a bolt because, technically speaking, the Dreadbolt and Wrathbolt were basically the zombie strike blasters from 2017 and 2018 that first introduced these new types of arrows. So, being that those were bolt blasters, I call these bolts, pretty much. In contrast to actual arrows that have basically been released before then, which I don't actually have. But you pretty much get the idea of what I'm getting at here. A compound bow related blaster might only have itself the usage of Nerf darts only because Hasbro has in fact tried to make actual arrows for a bow blaster, and that they didn't necessarily pan out too well. But the thing is, those were actual arrows that we've had pretty much since almost forever. And the fact that Nerf is actually blending Nerf blasters and compound bows together, and sometimes other kinds of bows, is not necessarily out of the elements, but it is certainly outmatched by hundreds of other different types of blasters out there. Of course, the Ultra 3 out there is, simply put, a small design with an amazing sort of performance value and style value and functionality value. And if you could really put all those together, plus any other sort of elements that factor into how good a blaster actually is, then you really have yourself nothing that could ever be argued with. For the Skyblaze, being that it has dart storage on it, that doesn't necessarily seem to do very good by any means. And the fact that it also has a smart AR system that's probably not as smart as most AR systems are meant to be. And the fact is that, well, this string feels like it's very, very thin, to the point where it could actually snap on you if you're not careful. And once a string is gone, then, well, the blaster is absolutely useless. Period. So, by any means, those three things alone, plus the fact that, well, this is basically just a compound bow that shoots Nerf darts and not actual arrows like what we've had before then. So, that's 4 things. But I feel like I got a 5th thing right here for you. Trying to make a bow from Dungeons and Dragons and put it together into a Nerf blaster, it does take a lot of special circumstances just to make it bad by any means. And while I will admit that the Ember Strike and Fire Shot certainly did have nice potential for being Dungeons and Dragons related stuff, a compound bow that doesn't necessarily fit my stature, mostly because my large hand kind of gets squeezed in by the small sized grip, combined with a really thin string that could easily be prone to breaking, dart storage that's rather faulty, and a smart AR system that is not very smart at all. It just means that, well, if I fire off the rest of the darts here, wow, that didn't work out too well. Well, that pretty much just sums it up for you guys. I hate to say it, but I mean, I really did expect a lot of good intentions from Hasbro, being that they were able to get the rights to Dungeons and Dragons and be able to create an entire Nerf line based off of the series. This long-running, well-known fantasy history board game based off of the good old medieval times, where witches and sorcerers, knights and dragons, conquests and adventures lie within. But the Dragon Power Skyblaze does not necessarily give us a good hand in allowing for us to really descend down into this little world known as Dungeons and Dragons in a really nice fashion. The Fire Shot and Ember Strike are pretty much what I can consider to be better than this one indeed. But the thing is that we're pretty much not done here. There's a lot of blasters out there that I feel like have to be mentioned at this point. But if you want to see more, go down to my channel and make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.